Welcome to the XY Advisor Podcast, a global community of financial advisors sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice. To get involved, go to xyadvisor.com or simply download the XY Advisor app.
Portfolio construction and risk management are tasks that take you away from where you need to be, building relationships with your clients. Aberdeen Standard Investments can support you by creating bespoke investment solutions. Outsourcing portfolio and risk management creates efficiencies, enabling you to focus on fulfilling the ambitions of both your clients and your business. This podcast has been prepared with care based on sources believed to be reliable, and all opinions expressed are honestly held at the applicable date. However, it is general information only, and we accept no liability for any errors or omissions. It's been prepared without taking into account the particular objectives, financial situation, or needs of any investor. Investing involves risk, including the risk of losing capital. It's important that before acting, investors should consider their own circumstances, objectives, and financial situation, the information's appropriateness to them, and consult financial and tax advisors. Investors should consider the PDS available at aberdeenstandard.com before making an investment decision. Products issued by Aberdeen Standard Investments Australia Limited, ABN 5900212334, AFSL number 204263.
Welcome to the XY Advisor Podcast. I'm your host, Fraser Jack, and today I am joined by the CEO of what is considered the fastest growing wealth tech company in Australia. Welcome, David.
Hi, Fraser.
Or should I say kia ora?
Kia ora. It's a delight to be speaking with such podcasting royalty as yourself.
Stop.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Now, quick introduction to you, David Pettit. You are both running an advice business, which has sort of morphed into a technology business over the years, and an AFSL.
That's right, yep.
So, well, what we might do is we might start at the beginning, because I sort of met you many, many years ago when you were running your private wealth practice, and you sort of spent 15 years as a financial planner in a fairly traditional space looking after high net worth clients in Western Australia.
Yeah, that's right. And yes, we've known each other for a while, and along the journey, I always know that you've been party to a good dad joke or a good pun. So ultimately today we're going to end up talking about technology. And I've got this friend over here in Perth. He's the CEO of a large fisheries company. I met him in Antarctica a few years ago. He's done some phenomenal things, most of it in sustainable fishing, being a carbon neutral fisheries company. And they introduced some tech. They put their supply chain on the blockchain. Ultimately, their customers could end up tracking the origin of their fish. So the pretty progressive stuff and at the cutting edge. Anyway, the local newspaper reported on it and said, fintech company that was scaling up. So fin like fish, tech like tech, and scales like fish scales.
Oh, brilliant. I do love a great pun. Well done.
Yeah, that was a double pun headline. But yeah, well, let's get to the fintech part a bit later and maybe share a little bit of the backstory.
Yeah.
You mentioned that we were a financial planning company that morphed into tech. It was actually the reverse of that. I'd had a career in financial planning, and then we launched a tech company, and then our financial planning sector changed dramatically. So we brought financial planning into that technology company, which ultimately ended up bringing in the licensing function as well. So keen to dive into all of that with you today, and again, appreciate that I get to speak to the pod god, #PodGod. So the backstory, I've been a private wealth advisor for about 15 years. I've got this fundamental belief between the link in health and wealth, and that is if we can help people live a healthier life, both in terms of physical health and mental health, then they're going to be better humans, better family members, and better contributors to the community. I did a couple of degrees at uni. I did a commerce degree and a physical education degree, including exercise science. And my professional career largely followed the path of the commerce degree, helping people with sophisticated financial models, thoughts, theories, strategies, blah, blah, blah. And I was about 10 years into my career where I kind of got this physical education part of my being back off the shelf, and then really started to talk about health and how that sits inside the financial advisory work that we do. So health and wealth is a big thing for me. Within our business, we were working in some large corporates over here in WA, big multinational resources companies, helping their senior execs and leadership team across their personal finances, and then ultimately having a chat to the decision makers in those companies around health and wealth and what that looked like in the employee sense. How can we empower you as a company to get all of your employees optimized, less financially stressed in terms of their own personal finances, so ultimately they could be more productive in the workplace. So at the absolute top of the org chart, they were clients of ours and they gave us the go-ahead, and they referred us down the org chart to kind of the HR and legal divisions to get the agreements in place so we could look after leadership teams and execs, but that's kind of where it stopped. And the reason for that was around risk. We come from an industry that was largely focused on product, and there's still a fair bit of stigma associated with that. And the risk that they were trying to manage was us going into their organizations and selling a product, which ultimately might be the right or wrong product, and they didn't have the depth of knowledge to know. So it became a blanket no, as in no access. So we really got thinking at that stage. I wanted to answer the question on how we could make that integrity of advice available for the masses and basically for free. And the only answer was technology. So the next discussion we had with those corporates was if we came in with some technology that allowed people to basically diagnose their financial positions, ascertain what their financial wellness was, and then work on creating a positive change effectively from bad or slightly good score to better or good score, then would that be something that would be of interest? So then we got a really positive response to that and dove all the way into that rabbit hole and did some MVP, minimum viable product testing, some online surveys, etc., pushed those across those corporates, and then ultimately got all of the feedback that we needed to kick off PictureWealth.
To validate, well done. Hey, before we go too much into that, a couple of quick questions. You were dealing with, obviously, without naming names or talking about personalities, large, corporate CEOs. You mentioned with their personal finance. I mean, obviously, we all know, having spoken to a lot of people, that just because somebody's earning a lot of money or they're a senior executive or they're running a company or they might be a CFO for a large company, that their personal stuff may still be in a mess. Is that sort of what you found? It was the plumber with a leaky tap?
Exactly. So we had the CFO at our boardroom table, and part of that testing as well was also to push out a research paper around, it was called The Consequences of Personal Financial Organization. Now, apparently for a book to become an Amazon bestseller, it needs to be how to get six-pack abs or, better sex or eat more, lose weight, something like that. And the consequences of personal financial organization didn't fly off the shelf. Maybe get rich quick's the other one. But anyway, the purpose of that research was to kind of let those CFO profiles know that it's okay and that you're not alone. You are the plumber, you've got the leaky taps, but so do all of your colleagues, your associates, and other people who hold similar roles within organizations as you. You're managing multi-billion-dollar balance sheets, and at home, things are an absolute mess. So having the backstory on the research and the data, and you could really, bring down those walls very, very quickly in the first 5 minutes of a meeting. And
can you just run through the research that you did in that space and how you went about it? Because I think it was brilliant, by the way.
Thank you. We partnered with the Australian Institute of Management, and we went across execs and senior leaders in business across WA and asked a whole heap of questions in relation to wealth, but not many of them were related to dollars and cents. It was more related to feeling, emotion, wellness, use of time, and on a spectrum, where do you sit across all facets of wealth? Super investment, debt, estate planning, yada, yada. And we found out everything that we probably innately knew. Later on, I met a lovely young lady at called it a networking event, and I told her that I'd done some research in the financial services sector, and her eyebrows went up. And then we had another meeting, and she later became my wife. So who could have imagined that running some financial wellness research would later on land me a beautiful bride? But it did. But yeah, that research, it was a fascinating process, and the big number that came out of it was that only 1 in 6 people feel totally organized in relation to their money. Now, the interesting and scary thing about that is we did the same research inside one of the big 4 accounting firms, and only 1 in 33 of them felt totally organized in relation to their money. Point being is they knew what they didn't know. The 1 in 6 who thought that they were organized, broadly they're blissfully unaware. And then those who were more in the professional services space knew what they didn't know, and, were calling out, "Can you help me?" So that was the advent of my career towards technology. It was fundamentally driven by improving financial wellness, which is kind of at my core as a human being. And yeah, the research, then that engagement with those corporates, which ultimately became PictureWealth, which is our technology company, was a pretty interesting and educational journey across society and humans as a whole.
Yeah, so here you are running a successful business, looking after CEOs and executive teams, and then you creating this thing, as you said, it was a bit of an MVP at the time, as to how do we help all the other employees within that business find their, or feel organised around their finances.
Yep.
How did you start that process? How did you go about it? How did you build something from scratch?
So the driver of the tech was largely around education. The financial information that was available online and largely ubiquitous is quite blunt. I'm a big fan of ASIC's Money Smart website. Their information and glossary in there is a financial planner's heaven, because it goes into such detail, but the information is not tailored or customized to the needs of the end user or consumer, and it doesn't provide any guided decision making on what people need to do next. It's just information. So the technology was around creating customized content for people in relation to their personal wealth, to educate them on how to make better decisions, and ultimately do that for free. PictureWealth, what is it? It was a tool that we put online a few years ago. We launched the company in March 2017, and it was embedded in the name of the company, a single picture of your wealth, aggregate all of your financial information together. I don't mean to downplay it, but think of it as a glorified Excel spreadsheet that's also tapping on your computer screen and computing some stuff behind the spreadsheet and saying, hey, do this, or think about this, or have you thought about this, or why on earth are you doing this? So we pushed the technology live and got some really great traction. That was at the advent of bank account aggregation and transactional information, which largely had been invisible to the everyday financial planner in the past, and ultimately it was very invisible to the end consumer. As you begin to see a picture of your wealth, you, believe it or not, feel a sense of calm. One of the users on the platform provided me some feedback directly to my inbox, and it said, now that I've got my very own wealthy, which is the dashboard, the wealth selfie that we run, she said, now that I've got my very own wealthy, my money is worse than I thought, but I feel more peaceful and calm that I can actually see it and start to understand what to do next. So the problem that we sought to solve for was just visibility, connecting disparate financial information into a single system, and then ultimately sitting behind that data and information to educate and empower people to make better choices.
Yeah, it's a really interesting step, isn't it? Just that certainty, as you said, even if the certainty shows that you're in a negative position, it's still better than not knowing.
Yep, absolutely.
And I love the selfie, the wealthy. By the way, that's
wealth selfie.
Let's keep the puns rolling.
That's that. People used to think I have a lisp. I kept saying wealthy. What's wrong with that, man? No, hashtag wealthy. Look out for it. It's going to be amazing. That ran for a year or so, and then we were thinking like a technology company. We were thinking about customer acquisition costs. We were thinking about lifetime customer value. We were spending money on Facebook, LinkedIn ads, getting people clicking onto our platform, to ultimately take them through a process that could lead to an advisory outcome. And I think this is where a lot of the fintech companies, their models have been revised significantly off the last 12 months, particularly off the back of the pandemic, which pushed the market down and dried up funding. As if you didn't have a model that produced revenue or allowed you to be sustainable, but you were reliant on investor funding, then you weren't going to stick around. And we saw a massive cleaning out of fintechs across last year, or at least getting acquired by massive institutions so that they disappear into the background. Point being is that really high cost of client acquisition in the robo-advisory space, as it was known earlier, or in the fintech arena, is pushing people, or ideally pulling people towards a product outcome. And the products have to move towards free. So therefore, the financial model of those businesses becomes somewhat questionable. I'm paying a whole heap of money to attract you as a potential customer onto my platform to then sell you a thing which I have to make forever cheaper to keep up with my competitors. And, you get to a point where you've run out of money. So we were looking at that customer acquisition cost in the business, creating great outcomes for people on the platform. But then, I kind of leveraged back off some of my financial planning knowledge and professional experience and mergers and acquisitions, and looked at what aphasia meant to the future of our industry. And then instead of just pushing our technology out into the great unknown through online marketing, we sent it completely the opposite direction, and that's into those financial planners who are otherwise looking to have a massive change in their business, exit, and or not knowing what to do as their next step. Was to give them a safe place to come to. And then now we use the technology to ultimately unlock the dormant potential of their client data and provide better outcomes for their clients. Last year, 2020, was our second full year of trading. The business now has over $2.25 billion funds under advice, revenues trending upwards of $20 million per year. And in last year, being the year of COVID, well, it turns out it's this year as well. We did 15 acquisitions. So we pushed the technology out into the great unknown, and then we want to sit here and help advisors who are a bit uncertain about their future, be they the ones that are leaving, or the ones that are starting, or the ones that just want to be optimized and have the best of breed technology backing them. And that's kind of where we sit today.
Yep.
One of those was the licensee, and we can talk about that when you're ready.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. So I just wanted to, obviously, you, as I mentioned sort of earlier, one of the fastest growing wealth tech / advice businesses in Australia. Some through acquisition, obviously, but some through, like you mentioned, unlocking the potential or the dormant potential in the existing clients.
Yeah.
So do you want to just run through how that works? Like how do you then just work out what that is, and then how do you grow that client?
I'll give you the extreme example. So advisor who's been in the industry for 30 odd years, and his client files are still paper, and they're in a filing cabinet in the corner of the office. Yep. Probably a lifey. So he's only ever sold insurance. But in order to sell insurance, he's had to have, the full depth of financial information across the whole client's profile in order to get to an end outcome to advise on the insurance product. Let's grab that filing cabinet and we'll shake it. We'll shake the data and information out of it, and we'll put that into a pretty sophisticated database, and then look across that database and start to do some pretty interesting things. First and foremost, let's stay on the insurance topic. We can run a needs analysis across thousands or tens of thousands of profiles at once. And provided the data that's in the system is current and accurate and up to date, you can, list the sums insured from largest to smallest and choose which end of the list you start at. But ultimately for the client, they potentially didn't have all of their financial matters addressed. So the dormant potential that resides in that data is, why do they have two super funds? Why are they paying their life insurance premium out of their own name? That seems like a high interest rate on their debt. What do you mean you don't have emergency savings? How come you've got money in the offset but 15 grand in your credit card? And that stuff it's tiny in terms of the quality of advice that professional financial planners give, because they're more on the headline topics. But if you can kind of shake that data and information and bring that stuff out to create some really, really quick wins for people, then that's the process of education, and it could be the case that they just didn't understand why they would have money in their offset versus holding their credit card balance at zero, or the fact that they could have perhaps paid for that life insurance premium in another method through superannuation and the likes. So dormant potential for us is working across large pools of information and using our technology in terms of, all of the stuff that we're running on the back end of the system to figure out how we can get someone further ahead. I presented to a group of advisors in Perth recently, and just said to the room, "Put your hand up if your clients have got insurance." Yep. Everyone in the room puts their hand up, and I said, "All right, keep your hand up if you know exactly how many of your clients have got kind of any occupation or own occupation definition." So then, a good chunk of the hands go down. Keep your hands up if you can give me the exact amount of premium that those clients are paying. I probably had about 10 more questions up my sleeve, but by that stage, bang, everyone's hands have gone down. So when I talked earlier about empowering the end client or consumer with their own financial data and information, it's the exact same philosophy that we hold across the advisory businesses that we work with under our license, and ultimately for our license, what's our funds under advice across the business today versus yesterday, whose premium renewals are coming up, what definitions reside inside insurance policies that are now out of date and could be better. And for me, the fundamental driver is creating visibility across financial data and information to improve people's lives.
Yeah, so really being able to structure that data in a way where it's easily visible, can be pulled up and can create a learning and create some opportunity, but also not just for the client, but for the advisor who was just opening files one at a time.
Yep.
Now, tell me about the technology, because I know there's people sitting here. A lot of advisors have put the idea that they might just design their own, go and build their own technology. Obviously, you and I both know that technology is a bucket that you have to throw a lot of money into, and then continually fill that bucket of money up again all the time. What sort of, if somebody, starting out thinking about building their own, what sort of tips, and maybe if we can talk about, costs and fundraising and raising money, all those sorts of things along the way, if somebody's thinking about building their own?
Is this a 3-hour podcast?
No. So let's do the short version.
Not the masterclass. First part of your question, the tech. Talk about it. I really look at the disparate systems that run financial planning companies at the moment. You're probably running a Microsoft suite, maybe Dropbox. You've got a CRM of some description. You've got a revenue tracking tool, which may or may not be accurate. You've got some quoting software. You've got probably some level of business intelligence, maybe Microsoft BI running across the business. You've got some stuff running through MailChimp, and fundamentally all of those things are what running a financial planning business looks and feels like.
The stack.
The stack, right?
Yep.
I just wanted to make that all our own. The easiest way to think about it is we built all of those things together under our own proprietary code, started from the ground up, and we now own and run all of that code as one system. I grew up in a little place in New Zealand called Queenstown, up in the mountains, lovely spot, and famous to the Lord of the Rings. There was one ring to rule them all. I really wanted to think about what one system to rule them all might look like. So where we got to, we have written over 1.5 million lines of code. To put that into perspective, that's about the same amount of code as it takes to fly a F-22 Raptor fighter jet. And it's about a quarter of the amount of code that runs Google Chrome. So it's a really sophisticated space that we all operating in. Financial planning is not about just selling products. It's about dealing with hopes and fears. And hopes and fears drive strategy, hopes being children's education, planning for the future, retirement, yada, 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 fears being protecting on downside, insurance, wills, etc. And when you really think about the complexity of what makes us human beings, it comes back to those two things. And I believe those two things are really what we're solving for in being financial planners. So the code base to address that, uniformly on the front end of the system, which is what people would see when they log into PictureWealth, is a fraction of the code base that we're running on the back end of the system, which really brings all of those disparate systems, the stack as you've called them, together onto our code. And that journey, it started as a PowerPoint presentation. And I met with someone and presented that PowerPoint presentation and didn't go according to plan. So I called up my brother and I said, didn't go according to plan. And he said, did you include animation in your PowerPoint? And I was like, animation? What's that? And then he kind of, let's get some stuff flying in from the side. Yep, we did that. And funnily enough, it worked. True story. And we raised some money and off a vision and an intent and the strong footing of that research that I spoke about earlier, we had a MVP that we knew we wanted to bring to market, and we did. So that was really a founders round and friends and family. We then went through a seed round and then a late seed round last year, where we raised about 12 million. And there's a fair bit in the media about that. Google PictureWealth, have a look. But that points us now to be, pretty well positioned to be considering a Series A capital raise that we're on at the moment. And our fundamental objective there is to come east. I love the quote out of The Art of War by Sun Tzu. He says, "Let your plans be as dark as night, and then strike like a lightning bolt." So we're a little WA business. Perth's a long way from the rest of Australia. Canva came from here. They did all right. We share our time zone with 60% of the world's population, but we're now ready to strike like a lightning bolt and coming east and bringing people, into our fold and really thinking about what the future of advice might look like together. And we've got a number of models that represents. I ponder our future. I have a feeling that we may actually regress. And that, could potentially be going back to the agency model. For those who are new in the industry, our sector came from life insurance brokers who had a story to tell and a policy to sell. They were a representative of a product. And then we went through a whole heap of reforms where they had to walk differently, talk differently, probably start wearing ties and then start delivering statements of advice. Yep. And then, FSR, FOFA, GFC, and ultimately FASIA was the straw that broke the camel's back. And now the regulatory or legislative burden that resides inside our businesses to run profitably is enormous. So I think what's just around the corner is potentially an agency model, but instead of being an agent of a product, you're an agent of a service. And if that service is technology, then all you have to do as an advisor is feed the machine and know that the whole back office support, paraplanning, advice production, data analytics, advice opportunity, identification, etc., is looked after for you. And bring us back to what advisors are best suited to do, and that's sit in front of clients and help them with their hopes and their fears. So here we come. We're in the market now. We had a big sprint through 2020 to get some scale, just like our friends at the fishing company. And now we want to go north up into Asia, where we're already reached out to, and then come east as we expand our network across the eastern seaboard of Australia.
Wow, amazing. So definitely on the technology side, it does take a large bucket of money. and a lot of 1.5 million lines of code takes time as well, time and money and passion. I'm sure that journey is not an easy one, and there would have been many of ups and downs along the way.
Yeah, plenty of funny stories, heartbreaking stories, joy, hope, fears, frustration. All of it comes with it as a startup founder. But I just so strongly believe that the best time for innovation is when uncertainty is at the highest. Yeah. And we can't. I haven't seen our sector go through a greater period of uncertainty. And the older generation who are unfortunately at their wits' end. I don't want to just help the end consumers that we're built to help. I want to help our sector. I want to take financial planning forward, and that's really what we've focused on. And how can we progress financial planning, financial education, financial literacy to become an everyday topic in all of everyone's lives? And the only way, in our humble opinion, is with technology that doesn't sit behind multiple thousands of dollars worth of fees, which limit access to that to only the select few.
Yep, which the clients have to pay for. Now, it's just thank heavens for animations on PowerPoint, because otherwise this may not have ever happened. But I wanted
you can actually put video in PowerPoint?
I think you can now. Wow.
Now, I've only just worked out the microwave.
I wanted to go into this idea that you mentioned around what the future of the financial advisor could look like, because obviously a big part of what advisors do, they help clients with decisions, and decisions, as you mentioned before, could be emotional decisions or logical decisions, and the software, the technology is taking a lot of the heavy lifting with the logical decisions, and then the advisors, their communication with the clients around the emotion of those decisions is happening. Does that mean for advisors there is an opportunity that you mentioned before that aren't going to be doing the financial advice piece to do that coaching piece?
Yeah, I mean, there's a spectrum. Think of it as a slider. On one end of the slider, you've got an advisor who's keen to get out, but they still want to share their knowledge, wisdom, and information either with primarily across the industry. So if they're out, they don't necessarily need to be coaching the end client, because at the other end of that slider is someone who's just starting their career. And so if you've got an advisor who's exiting and handing over the servicing of their clients, however that may be, and then a new advisor that you're bringing in to look after those clients, the coaching can actually happen behind the scenes. So ex-advisor to new advisor, here's the client case, here's the relationship that I've had for a long time, and here's the reasons why I've got 3 super balances running for them, because they're each individually taxed parcels, and there's information that would completely exit the industry if you don't create a space for those who are the pioneers of financial planning across Australia. And in terms of what the slider looks like for the people that could interact with us, it's a different one. You've got completely independent on the left-hand side, although you're working with our licensing. You run your business, you run your brand, but you get access to our technology to optimize and drive profits in your company. And then we move it a bit further along, and that's the partnered model where we put in place all of the back office infrastructure, people, support, paraplanning, like I spoke about before. But we're also acquisitional. So you've got independent to partnered to transitioned, meaning that we've done some kind of transaction with them. And at that point, they're either going to exit or become an employee of ours to continue servicing clients, or sit internally in the business to help our coach and guide our advisors.
Wow. So you've got a lot of different models. Obviously, you probably need that with 15 different acquisitions in the last 12 months and all of those financial advisors staying on in some formal capacity.
Yeah, well, I think that, it all comes back to the client. You and I have spoken before about goals, and let's talk about it now before I steal your thunder and claim your term. But Craig, you refer to it as goals under management. Yeah, we track funds under management as a sector, FUM, but you track GUM. Can you tell me a bit about that? And then, that's fundamental to what we do, but I just love hearing it from you.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So the idea that you can walk into any particular place or talk to a client or intermediary, and you can say, This is the exact amount of goals that we have as a practice under management. We look after this many clients, we look after this many goals, and this is our goals under management, our measure of success. And if you like, you could really just say, look, we're trying to get that down to zero. That'd be the ultimate, right? Everybody achieving their goals. That's never going to happen because there are always going to be more goals to come into place. But that and the concept of, how many goals in the last 12 months did you help your clients achieve? That's the other thing. How can you just say what we've achieved in the past as a business, as a licensee, as an industry, to be able to start talking about the fact that we're looking after human emotions, human goals as a profession, not we're just looking after the unemotional part or the money part of it.
Absolutely. And gum makes clients more. Come on, it's your joke. Sticky.
That's right. I'd forgotten the answer to that one. But yes.
That was one we prepared earlier, didn't it?
That was one I spoke to you earlier about. Gum makes clients sticky. Correct.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's an awesome way to think about it because, coming back to the comment of hopes and fears, it's all about goals. Advice is about strategy and, way down at the bottom of that is product. Our sector needs to move really, really quickly away from product being the thing to having the consumer or the client being the thing, and then reaching back across sector, across industry to see which products can help those goals come to life.
Yep. I think it helps with everything too, with FDS, with opt-in, with what service are you providing for the fees you're charging. There's just moving somebody towards their goal is part of the service you're offering, not just a review of their super fund.
Well, and beyond that, a fact find is not actually a thing. So I reckon somewhere in Australia there was a conference and someone stood up and held a data collection document at the front of the room and waved it at everyone, and then it got adopted and then got called a fact finder. And then we as financial planners spent a couple of decades sitting in front of people for an hour and a half asking them to spell their middle name and, boring, blunt data that can be collected almost at the blink of an eye digitally now. And, that process needs to change. So the reference to fact finder does not reside in the legislation anywhere. We've got Craig, who's working with us, who spent 14 and a half years with ASIC. He's joined as our Chief Compliance Officer, and it's fascinating when you really, really dive into what the regulation's trying to help us do, and ultimately it's just saying, know your client. Whilst we know that's in our business and it's a checklist that we must adopt, how about you get to know the data at arm's length and at least in a trusted way, but get to know your client at a human level and dive into their goals and objectives and their, what's scoped in, what's scoped out, and do we have consent to provide you across the areas that we think should be scoped in that you potentially don't think you need advice on, and that's the future of our sector.
Yeah. I think fact find actually was around before financial services reform kicked in 2001, 2002, because it used to be the information that you would put in the old customer advice record before we had SOAs.
Yeah.
So it's a sort of a hangover from a previous regime, if you like.
Yeah. So, what do you care about? What does success look like?
Yep.
Who's important to you?
Yep, exactly.
Blah, blah, blah.
Now, I want to talk about the concept that during your acquisitions and process in the last couple of years, you ended up with acquiring a licensee.
We did.
I want to talk about how that happened and also what you've turned that into.
Sure. So we were looking at it. Yeah, it's a bit like bacon and eggs, really. The chicken was involved, but the pig was fully committed. Yeah. So we built the tech. We got the financial planning arm of the business going, but then we really wanted to commit and take over a licensing offer so that we could make the most technologically advanced licensing offer available across Australia. So that was a transaction which occurred front end of last year. The transaction settled on the 27th of March, which was 4 days out of the bottom of the market, mid-lockdown, COVID at its peak, and none of the shareholders on either side, the financiers, the lawyers, the bankers, or key directors across either business could be in the same room. So a fun and educational process there, but like our industry, where COVID taught everyone to bring forward about 3 or 4 years worth of digitization into a 2-month period, we got it done. And the premise behind that transaction is that leadership team, particularly Mark, who ran that licensee and now joins us as our Chief Operating Officer, has a very, very aligned belief in what we think the future of advice is. And he was completely there with the vision. He was missing the technology piece. So on completion of that acquisition, he's become a meaningful part of our org chart and our company as a whole. And that is to do what I've just said, and that's bring the most technologically advanced licensee out to the country. What does that actually mean? Go back to my comments before. The wealthy lets mum and dad Australia see their wealth. The super wealthy lets financial planners who are working with us see the wealth of all of their wealthies. Here goes my lisp again. And the super wealthy is us at the licensee level. What can we help you with in terms of getting data and information together that's otherwise been through a third-party provider, and you didn't have direct access or control to the ownership or use of that data and information, and bring that together, and then come to your business and say, here's some other stuff that you could improve on.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this exact point, because the data has often flowed through 2 or 3 different stepping stones before it gets to the financial advisor. And that's sort of the premise of why it's always been untrusted or late or we're not sure about. And
you can't trust it. It's inaccurate, and you can't have it feed straight on to advice documents to know hand on heart that you're dealing with real source information. Yep. So the lesson for us is when we allowed clients on our platform who could connect to up to 22,000 financial institutions across the world to bring in historical spendings or super fund balances or share portfolios or everything. Really at the consumer side, we wanted to go to the other side, and that's to connect straight into the institutions across all of the clients that we're ultimately the servicing advisor for, and connect directly into those institutions live information, so that we can hand on heart have integrity of data and information that can drop straight onto advice documents, and we can know it and trust it, and run analytics across it to determine if they're in the right thing or not.
So you're saying you've solved that?
Yeah.
That's massive.
It's massive. We are not at the end of the list by any means, and connecting to 100% of the institutions there. We just think the old Pareto principle, 80-20. 80% of your clients are going to be sitting with 20% of the providers. So we're in that 20% of providers at the moment, but we're starting to see, closer to 80% of the data. So ultimately then, as the most technologically advanced licensee, we want to work with advisors on that continuum, either in an independent model, a partner model, a transition model, or an employed model, to work with us in leveraging data and information to provide better advice. And all the while, the business is pursuing what we started, a number of years ago now, which is the employee financial wellness, where we're picking up thousands or tens of thousands of clients through our employee financial wellness program, that people coming under the license not only get to use the tech, but we want them, if they're following the methodology and how we provide advice, we want them to help us service clients that's a list now of our employee financial wellness program, which is larger than we have resources to get to. So that's kind of where we sit, mate. The lightning bolts hit. We're in market. We spent the time and energy, quietly confident that we have a solution for the future. We're here now with that solution, and we'll bring some marketing and presence across East. We do have an office in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, as it stands, with people on the ground there, but we really want to scale up for the purpose of getting to the 94% of Australia that it remains unadvised. I made that statistic up, by the way. I reckon that might be about right, 80-20, and then 80-20 of the ones that are advised, because a good chunk of them aren't.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. That is it an ongoing fee relationship? Is it one piece of advice, one off, one time? It's very difficult to sort of say. But I think I've got a bit of a saying that 10% of any market will pay 10 times the price because it's prestige, and often the financial advice, the way it is at the moment, is that prestige end of the market. It's the first class airlines and Prada handbags of the industry.
Yeah, exactly. And with Craig's depths of knowledge from the regulator, we bring that into the tech. Think karaoke, follow the bouncing ball as you sing along. The technology wants to guide you and your client through a systemized, think of a process production line or assembly line almost, where you know what you need to do next so that you're compliant, you're meeting the regulatory requirements, but ultimately your client is getting frequent touch points along that production line to get to be in an ongoing serviced relationship, probably annually renewable, because we know that's just around the corner. And
No, well, all these little stepping stones, the bouncing ball, I can just visualize at the end of the song. There's the financial advisor standing there going, well, what can we do next?
Yeah, jazz hands.
What's the jazz hands? Sure, that's exactly the visual I'm getting. So tell us about, 2.5 years now in as you're going. How many clients have you got, or how many clients you're looking after with that the PictureWealth, with the wealthy and advised clients?
Yeah, there's 40,000 clients across the business now, which is pretty quick growth. We're now we're at the point where we're aiming to get the technology into 100% of their hands. We're not there yet. And we are talking to prospective investors in the company at the moment. And again, there's a deep topic here, which we could go all the way into, but we could have gone deep tech and building some AI widget toy thing, which people would have plowed money into, which it ultimately wouldn't have made money, but it would have solved a problem. But we went at it from the other end, and that's get to scale first. So we've got a pipeline ahead of us, which will take us out to about 150% of the clients that we have at the moment, around about 100,000 clients across the business, and where we deploy the technology across those, and then we go deep. Once the data and information's there, then you've got the balance sheet and the P&L to go deeper on the tech and bring the AIs and the robots and the machine learning to the next level from what we've done already. You also start to see a different shape of your P&L. So your profit and loss statement, you see new income lines coming in, where those income lines are related to software as a service, as opposed to financial planning advisory services, which also equal FDS and opt-in. It gives you the ability to introduce new income lines into your business. And it's us now to roll out the tech and those software as a service agreements across our existing client base and the work in progress or the pipeline that's just ahead of us, with some pretty big ambitions ahead. But yeah, I like the fact that we're here in Australia. It's the most heavily regulated environment in the world, which also means it's hard. But if you can solve it, then as you globalize, it's really just about decreasing complexity. And knowing at the core of the business, you're still dealing with the same fundamental problem or opportunity, and that's just helping people. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
That pretty much does. I'm blown away, and heading towards 100,000 clients in only a few short years is pretty incredible, and certainly goes to show what is possible, and smashing a few glass ceilings on the way through. Congratulations. Now, if somebody wants to continue the conversation, what's the best way they can get hold of you and talk about licensing or anything today that you spoke about?
I mean, you'll find me on LinkedIn. I love to communicate. We're here to help. If you're in the industry and you want to stick around, we're here to help. If you want to get out, we're here to help. Or you can just ping us through our website or on email, which is info@PictureWealth.com, info@PictureWealth.com, and reach out. I'm a phone call away. I want to talk to people. I want some momentum. I want to, fundamentally help the advice community to do what we're all setting out to do, somewhat in a disjointed manner historically, and in a more cohesive manner as we go forward, and really lean into the fundamentals of probably everyone who's listening to this podcast, and that is how can we all learn from each other and create better outcomes for consumers. So I absolutely invite people to reach out, whatever the topic may be.
Wonderful. Thank you, David Pettit. Really appreciate sharing your story with us, and I really look forward to seeing how this pans out over the next couple of years. I'm excited for you.
Thanks, Fraser. I greatly appreciate it.
Well, there you have it, another episode of the XY Advisor podcast. Fraser Jack here, joined with me, Emily Blanche.
Hey, Fraser, how are you?
I'm fantastic, and a fantastic moment where we get to do some shout-outs.
Like I say, my favourite time of the week. All right, so today I want to give a massive shout-out to XY Advisor Thomas Lyon. He reached out to XY, in particular through XY Plus, when he was looking to join a new practice when he moved interstate from Brisbane to Sydney. And the reason I want to give him a shout out is because he sent the most amazing message through earlier this week, and I want to quickly read it out. He said, super grateful that I found XY. I first joined and was using it, I first joined when I started out as an undergraduate in financial planning, and it gave me my first insights into the type of people that financial advisors are and what day-to-day looks like as a career. Recently, I reached out to the guys at XY during my move interstate, and Emily put me in contact with the person who is now my new employer. Super cool that we've got this group for financial advisors. Amazing stuff. Great to be able to make those connections. And I know Thomas was looking to join a forward-thinking practice where he could become a real asset, add to the company and deliver great value to clients. And to be able to see that come about is amazing.
Such a feel-good moment, such a feel-good moment for Thomas, but also for you, Em, to be able to connect that and and help Thomas's career along. I remember having a beer with you, Thomas, at the XY Christmas party on the Gold Coast at the end of last year. So it's really good to see that you've found your feet, and congratulations.